Yo, YouTube, what up? It's Mellow. Today we got another mini documentary. This one's on Ryan Wedding. This guy's like a drug kingpin that originally was an Olympic snowboarder, Canadian. Yeah, bro. All of a sudden he's mixed up with the Mexican cartel. I think it was Al Mencho even. So let's see what this documentary is saying, man. I haven't heard much about him other than him getting arrested.
No king. Ryan Wedding was born in 1981 in Thunder Bay, Ontario. And by
Thunder
the time
Bay,
Ryan could walk, his
with the
grandfather
buckets.
already had him on skis. As a child, Ryan was described as bold and reckless, but also having a strong focus. At the age of 12, shortly after his family moved to Coquitlam, British Columbia, near Vancouver, he started snowboarding. Soon, he entered his first race and won. That's when he got noticed by Bob Allison, a former professional skier who was putting together an elite Canadian snowboarding team. In a 2009 interview with the Rolling Stone, Bob Allison described Ryan as a child with no fear. A lot of kids, they say they want to go fast, but they don't really want to go fast. They hold something back because there's a little bit of fear there of falling. Ryan had none of that. By 15, he had made the Canadian national team. He competed across the Alps and Andes, winning bronze at the Junior World Championships in 1999 and silver 2 years later. Commentators began comparing him to Ross Rebliati, Canadian's Olympic gold medalist. And in 2002, at just 20 years old, Ryan Wedding was chosen to represent Canada at the Winter Olympics in Salt Lake City, Utah. It seemed like the start of a serious career. However, the day of the race, the weather had changed, and the snow had softened, turning watery. When the race began, Ryan launched himself out of the chute. By the third gate, his line was off, but it was too late to fix. He finished 24th, just 1 second short of qualifying for the next round. Years of training had all led to that one moment, and in an instant, it was gone. Ross Rebliati acknowledged Ryan's potential, but said he had everything in place to make it happen, but you've got to want it, and Ryan wanted something else. After Salt Lake City, that something else started to take shape. Not long after the Olympics, he enrolled at Simon Fraser University in Vancouver, but instead of channeling his drive into academics, he focused on building his body. The slim Olympian became stockier, stronger. He began working nights as a bouncer. A friend from the time remembered his first shift. A fight broke out in the parking lot and spiraled into chaos. Cars screeched across the pavement, trying to run people over. One of the bouncers grabbed a hatchet from another person in the fight and smashed it into the hood of a car that came at them. It was around that time that Vancouver was starting to change. Random violence became common. What police didn't realize at the time was that the city was on the brink of a gang war, a fight for control over its marijuana trade. In the early 2000s, Vancouver sat just 25 miles from the longest unprotected border in North America. A pound of marijuana sold for about $2,000 on the streets. Across the border, it went for double. Between 2001 and 2004, shootings erupted in the city's clubs. Police began sweeping through bars, throwing out anyone who looked like a dealer. The old criminal group stayed quiet, but the new ones didn't. Peter Edwards, a Toronto Star reporter, explained, "Many of these were upper-middle-class kids. They went to good schools. What drew them to it was the image, the glamour. Flashy, reckless, eager to prove themselves, their crimes became a kind of performance. The violence was public. Bodies left in cars, along the waterfront, and in the street.
This was over weed?
Among the clubs caught in this storm was the one where Ryan worked. As
No
other bouncers
way.
began wearing bulletproof vests, he told his mother he didn't need one. He wasn't scared. He was intrigued. Soon, Ryan found himself making friends with the same people.
Where are they getting this information? Did you speak to his mother, or like who told this guy this, bro?
He had been hired to keep out. Friends with connections. Connections with opportunity. His girlfriend at the time noticed the shift from the quiet family type who didn't care about status or appearance to the man wearing Prada shoes and Breitling watches. After 2 years of college, Ryan dropped out. With a $250,000 loan from his father, he bought and resold a house in Maple Ridge, a high-end
$250,000 loan from his father. Wow.
suburb just outside of Vancouver. The profit funded a luxurious new apartment in Westwood Plateau in Coquitlam, BC, with high ceilings, a pinball machine, and a racing seat gaming setup. In the garage, he had snowmobiles, a Ducati, and a BMW M5. But even with the profit from the resold house on Maple Ridge, this lifestyle was too expensive for a bouncer. So, Wedding turned to something else. A business. Quiet, profitable, and illegal. The setup seemed perfect. His friend owned a property in Maple Ridge called the 18 Carat Farms, but instead of carrots, they planted cannabis. A confidential informant said Ryan and a partner were cultivating 8,000 marijuana plants. Twice a month, Ryan drove out, tended to the plants, and delivered product to a supplier. The operation was pulling in hundreds of thousands a year, maybe more. However, it was also pulling a lot of electricity. 2,000 kilowatt hours a month, far more than any typical warehouse. There were a few things that could explain that kind of energy use, and one of them was marijuana grow lights. By the summer of 2006, the authorities had taken notice. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police, or RCMP for short, raided the property, finding loaded guns in a locked safe, 6,800 cannabis plants, and 86 pounds of dried marijuana, an estimated $10 million in value and the largest grow farm uncovered in Maple Ridge. But with only a confidential informant linking Ryan to the site, the police never pressed charges. It wasn't surprising. Between 1997 and 2003, BC law enforcement investigated roughly 25,000 grow ops, buildings reworked to produce large amounts of marijuana. However, the police couldn't keep up, so the priority shifted from prosecution to just shutting places down. In fall 2007, Ryan befriended Hassan Shirini, a Persian Canadian known to police since 1997. Shirini opened a new door for Ryan, the Hawala Network, a trust-based money transferring system dating back to the 8th century and still operating around the world today. Hawala, also called Hundi, operates on trust and brokers, the Hawaladars. A client hands a Hawala cash and a fee. They agree on a code. The broker relays that code and the details to a broker located where the recipient of the transfer lives. Payment is made locally. The actual funds are settled later between brokers, sometimes via the internet or courier. It is efficient, discreet, and global. And because it
never heard of that. That's for the real criminals that are getting that much money, bro.
Moves outside banks and other traditional channels, the network can be exploited for criminal purposes. By 2007, Wedding was telling friends he was broke. He had lost roughly $500,000 on a shady real estate deal and, per Shirini's later testimony, another $300,000 on a cocaine deal gone bad. According to Shirini, Wedding then approached him about buying cocaine in California and said he could front about $340,000. After a series of meetings, including one with two men tied to Russian organized crime, they agreed to try for 24 kilos from a contact in LA. If it worked, they'd keep going. From the moment they arrived in LA, the FBI was watching. Wedding had never handled a deal this big, and, to agents, it showed. He never asked where the cocaine was coming from, and he appeared in person rather than using a middleman. The exchange ran through two Russians, Michael Krapchen and Yuri Trofimov. Krapchen feared Trofimov, an ex-KGB agent from a now-defunct secret police system whose reputation alone scared most people. On June 10, 2008, Trofimov met them at the airport and demanded to see the cash. He was told they needed a few days to access it. Angry, he still agreed to the plan. Sell them a single kilo, then the rest later. The FBI had agents posted throughout the airport, ready to make an arrest. But when the plan shifted, they stood down. Wedding didn't look nervous. Agents said he acted like a tourist. He and Shirini visited malls, restaurants, hookah bars, and a Persian rug store that doubled as a Hawala broker. They picked up $120,000 there, and the deal was on. On June 13, 2008.
So the rug shop doubled as he said, a Hawala dealer, or what did he say, broker? So that's where they transfer the money. So the rug shop is like a money laundering, money transfer type of thing. This is kind of crazy, bro.
As soon as Krapchen handed Trofimov $17,000 for 1 kilo, agents moved in and he was arrested on the spot. Wedding and Shirini were arrested next, as they were leaving the hotel room in San Diego. With hours of recorded calls and meetings against them, Shirini and Krapchen agreed to plea deals. Hassan Shirini was sentenced to 18 months, and Michael Krapchen 30 months. But Ryan Wedding declined to cooperate. Brett Kalina, a former FBI agent who arrested him, told the Rolling Stone he was
declined to cooperate. Okay, that's big, because there's no way if he would have cooperated, he would have been like working with the cartel and shit like that. I know they don't play that shit at all.
Very controlled. Once we read him his rights, he didn't say anything. And in few instances that we did have the chance to interact with him, when we were either picking him up from jail or dropping him off to make a proffer, he was kind of like, you know you're not getting anything from me. Ryan remained quiet, but his demeanor showed disrespect for authority. During a jail transfer search, he used a homophobic slur against Agent Kalina. The outburst was striking because it was unusual. Typically, when people are arrested, they try to make nice. They're vulnerable. They know who has the power at the moment and who doesn't, Kalina explained. His trial was scheduled in San Diego for November 2009. His mother and sister attended in support. In court, Ryan Wedding's lawyer argued that Shirini had brought Wedding along as the fall guy. To create the impression that Wedding financed the operation, the lawyer said Shirini claimed his credit card was maxed out, pushing Wedding to cover daily expenses.
Let me hear that again.
In support. In court, Ryan Wedding's lawyer argued that Shirini had brought Wedding along as the fall guy.
So they argued in court that one of the guys that ratted brought Ryan Wedding along as the fault guy. So that's not snitching. Like, they're trying to separate the cases. That's what it sounds like to me. But that sounds like telling as well.
Create the impression that Wedding financed the operation. The lawyer said Shirini claimed his credit card was maxed out, pushing Wedding to cover daily expenses. And when the conspirators discussed business, by phone or in person, they often spoke Farsi or Russian, languages Ryan did not understand.
So yeah, he's basically trying to separate his case from their case and say he was not a part of it, but he's still admitting to crime.
And when speaking English, they used code, referring to the drugs as cars. Perhaps, the lawyers argued, Wedding really believed he was in Los Angeles to buy automobiles. When Hassan Shirini testified, he offered a different account. He failed to disclose that he had managed the Hawala transfer to the Los Angeles rug store and that he had arranged for the drugs to be smuggled into Canada, but he insisted he handled only logistics. Wedding, he said, devised the scheme and put up most of the money. Ryan Wedding was convicted of conspiring to traffic cocaine. The mandatory minimum was 10 years, but Agent Brett Kalina believed Wedding understood that there was a strong chance he would be
mandatory minimum 10 years. So let me hear this.
The mandatory minimum was 10 years, but Agent Brett Kalina believed Wedding understood that there was a strong chance he would be transferred to a Canadian facility where the term would be substantially reduced. During the 2 years between arrest and conviction, Wedding was held in San Diego at the Metropolitan Correctional Center, a place that, for him, seemed to have done more training than correcting. Agent Kalina admitted this was only the beginning for Ryan. You've got people that are in that facility that have amazing drug world connections. We really did just turn him into a much better drug dealer than he was when he started with us. The Metropolitan Correctional Center holds inmates awaiting trial or sentencing.
Bro, I said that in a previous video about going to jail. Parents not wanting to bail them out, thinking that's going to teach them a lesson. A lot of times when you're in jail, you're just networking with bigger criminals, trying to get better at your craft. They're not rehabilitating these guys. These guys are going in there regular and coming out demons, madman, with all the new connects, with all the new techniques, thinking that they're sick. Like,
of federal offenses, including lower-level members of Mexican drug trafficking organizations, particularly mules, who specialize in moving drugs across the border. While there, Wedding organized up to 5 girlfriends back home to wash his car, clean his apartment, and collect money from associates to pay creditors. He also phoned male associates, boasting about the good
He
connections
said
he was
5
making in custody.
girlfriends? Yo, we're not skipping past that. He said he has
Drugs across the
5
border.
girlfriends.
While there, Wedding organized up to 5 girlfriends back home to wash his car, clean his apartment, and collect money from associates to pay creditors. He also phoned male associates, boasting about the good connections he was making in custody. Meanwhile, in court, he sang a completely different tune. What I did was completely out of character for me, and it is a personal mission of mine to rebuild my reputation, he told the judge. And they bought it. The court imposed a lower term than initially intended, 48 months minus time served. Ryan Wedding had...
The nigga got 2 years minus time served. Wow. That's what happens when you have some status, bro. A white boy that used to snowboard. This guy looked at the judge, probably had letters from certain people vouching for him. Yeah, bro. And when you have money as well, he probably had so much money for the lawyer. That's crazy, bro.
Lied to the court. At least, not entirely. He did plan to rebuild, but it wouldn't be the kind of rehabilitation the judge had in mind. What he took with him back to Canada wasn't a desire to live a life of a law-abiding citizen, but experience that acted as the foundation to his future criminal empire. With the new year, it's time to get to rebuilding yourself. A good workout routine is a must. Or when Ryan Wedding returned to Canada, he settled in Montreal, a city in transition. The drug trade, once dominated by the mafia, was now open territory. Brian Fitzpatrick, a senior investigative reporter with the Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project, explained, "In Canada, it's not as regimented as Mexico, where certain cartels control key corridors or plazas. It's much more entrepreneurial. You might work with the Sinaloa cartel, and there's someone else a couple towns over who does as well, and you don't even know each other exist." By the early 2010s, one drug kingpin was already making inroads into Canada, Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, who had risen to become the most powerful drug trafficker in the world. Under his command, the Sinaloa cartel expanded into one of the largest drug smuggling networks in history. At the time, the cartel was operating in more than 50 countries and responsible for the bulk of narcotics crossing the US-Mexico border. In the 2010s, its attention turned north. Canada, with its high street prices and relatively light federal drug enforcement compared to the US, was seen as a strategic safe zone, a place where cartel operatives could meet international partners and arrange shipments of drug precursors. The cartel's expansion into Canada caught American authorities off guard. According to US investigators, cocaine shipments were smuggled across the border into Arizona, stored in a warehouse in Tucson or Phoenix, then transported by vehicle to the Washington-British Columbia border. From there, the drugs were loaded onto helicopters and dropped into forested areas on the Canadian side. But law enforcement had plans of their own. An officer identified in court records only as Joe infiltrated Canada's underground drug market as a part of a sting operation known as Operation Harrington, designed specifically to disrupt the cocaine pipeline between Mexico and Canada. Meanwhile, by February 2014, Ryan Wedding had filed for bankruptcy. In a sworn statement, he claimed to be unemployed. British Columbia bankruptcy records showed he was leasing a new Ford F-350 pickup and living in a gated condo complex in Coquitlam with his wife. Despite this, Wedding declared that neither of them had any income. On paper, he was relying solely on financial support from family members. I, due to being in prison for several years, unable to work and contribute to the household, was unable to fulfill my financial obligations as they became due, Wedding wrote. That was the public version. Privately, something else was underway. In January 2015, the undercover officer Joe traveled to Montreal to meet with a man named Filipos Colaros, identified in court documents as having direct ties to El Chapo. According to the records, at their meeting, Colaros told Joe that he had brought the man in charge. Moments later, Ryan Wedding walked in and introduced himself as a cocaine importer. From the moment Joe met Wedding, he realized immediately that he was dealing with a seasoned operator. Wedding asked detailed questions about boat capacity, mapped out transfer routes, and together they came up with a plan. A large research vessel would collect the shipment from sink kits, then transfer it mid-sea to a fleet of smaller...
Bro, this shit blows my mind, you know? Cause like, you might think you're sick on road, you know, you might be serving a 9 right now. You may be working your way up to a breezy. And then there's these guys meeting with the cartel, organizing drop-offs in the water, talking about boats across the border. I just seen on the news the other day, a 17-year-old got caught with 700 bricks. Are you kidding me? Was it 700 bricks? It was like 300 bricks, bro. I couldn't believe it. Like, you might think you're sick. You might be making $200K a year selling your work, but there's guys like this that are doing it times 10, times 50, times 100. When I watch those little shows like Narcos and this and that, Snowfall, I just sit back like, yo, imagine that was me, yo. I'll be out of here.
Detailed questions about boat capacity, mapped out transfer routes, and together they came up with a plan. A large research vessel would collect the shipment from sink kits, then transfer it mid-sea to a fleet of smaller fishing trawlers, which would deliver the load discreetly to shore in Newfoundland. They agreed on a test run, between 500 and 1,000 kilograms of cocaine, with Joe taking a 25%.
A test run of 500 to 1,000 bricks. That's the test run. This is not no play shit. 500 to 1,000 bricks as a test run? So what's the regular run? 5,000 bricks? Holy smokes, bro.
But before anything could move forward, the plan was shut down. On April 20th, 2015, the RCMP launched coordinated raids across Canada and issued 15 arrest warrants. Among those named were Ryan Wedding and Filipos Colaros. It remains unclear whether Claros cooperated with the Crown, but in the end, he served just 1 day in prison, as the rest was covered by time already spent in custody. Then, on the evening of November 7th, 2018, Claros was sitting in a coffee shop in Montreal's Little Italy when a man entered the cafe and shot him. He died that night in the hospital. The murder was never solved, but there was one clear person of interest, someone with motive and reason to fear what Claros might say to authorities. That man was Ryan Wedding.
Yo, nah, he's a bad boy. Yo, Ryan Wedding's a bad boy.
Kit's pot. If brought to trial, he could have testified. But by then, Wedding was no longer in Canada. When the RCMP arrived at his Montreal condo in 2015 to make the arrest, he was already gone. Authorities believe he fled the country and went straight into the protection of the Sinaloa cartel. But while in hiding, Ryan Wedding would become more dangerous than ever. Little is known about his exact movements in the years that followed, but the consequences of his decisions were felt, often far from view, and sometimes by those with no part in his world. On the morning of November 20th, 2023, 28-year-old Jasprit Kaur Sidhu was woken by her father, Jagtar Singh Sidhu, 57. They had argued days earlier, but that morning there was an urgency in his voice. He told her, "If we don't talk today, it will be never." Before leaving, he said, "Remember one thing. The day I die, I will tell myself that I love my daughter more than anyone else in this world." Jagtar and his wife, Harbhajan Kaur Sidhu, 55, had been visiting from India for 4 months. They were staying with Jasprit and her brother Gurdit at their rental home on Mayfield Road near the Caledon-Brampton border. The couple planned to return to India in January. Until then, their visit had been peaceful. But late that night on November 20th,
What the
around
hell's
11:30
going
PM,
on?
everything changed. Jasprit was getting ready for bed when she saw a man standing in the hallway. She saw her father collapse from gunfire, heard her mother scream, and then there was complete silence except for the noises of gunshots. Downstairs, her close friend Sukhwinder, Sunny Singh, had heard the gunfire. He rushed outside and saw the shooter flee in the back of a pickup truck, with at least one other person inside. When they were gone, he returned to the house to find Jagtar motionless outside the bathroom. There was no pulse. His wife, Harbhajan, shot multiple times, was still breathing. but barely.
Wow, in
According
the
to
house.
family,
They broke into the house and
police
packed.
arrived nearly 20 minutes after the first 911 call. The ambulance took another 10 minutes. Harbhajan, who had been shot a total of 22 times, died in the hospital nearly 2 weeks later. Her daughter,
Overcooked
Jasprit,
him.
shot 13 times. survived. Most
Rasclat,
of the bullets
Rasclat. She
were
survived.
removed, but one remains lodged in her spine. Doctors determined that removing it would carry a high risk of paralysis or coma. At first, investigators were at a loss. Why would someone target a quiet, ordinary family and with such brutality? The answer came later when the investigation was handed over to the FBI, who alleged that the Sidhus were targeted by mistake. According to agents, the shooter,
What?
still unidentified, was
What?
working for Ryan Wedding. He had been sent in response to a stolen drug shipment. The Sidhus, they believe, had nothing to do with it. For federal investigators, the killing of Jagtar and Harbhajan Sidhu became yet another tragic example of the damage caused by the global drug
That's
trade.
crazy.
But for their children, Jasprit and Gurdit, the impact was direct. Jasprit spent 7 months in the hospital. When she finally stood again, she needed assistance with even routine tasks. Trauma lingers. She says she still hears her mother's screams every day. "I can never forget that," she said. Speaking about Wedding, her words were clear. He will have to face his karma. According to the U.S. Department of Justice, Ryan Wedding expanded his drugs.
Why are they so sure it was him if they never? How do they know the shooter was working for Ryan Wedding? That's weird.
Smuggling operation into a billion-dollar enterprise, moving an estimated 60 tons of cocaine each year, valued at nearly $500 million,
Are you
primarily
kidding
through the
me?
United States and into Canada. Over time, he accumulated a series of aliases: RW, James Conrad King, Buddy, Giant, Public Enemy, El Toro, and El Jefe. Behind the scenes, Wedding constructed a network, people he could trust to carry out orders and keep the supply chain moving. One of them was Jonathan Acevedo Garcia, a Colombian Canadian from Montreal who worked in his family's cleaning business. In 2009, U.S. agents stopped Acevedo Garcia at the New York-Ontario border and found 23,000 ecstasy pills laced with methamphetamine in his car. He pleaded guilty to drug trafficking conspiracy and received a 4-year sentence, part of which he served at Reeves County in Texas, where he likely met Wedding. By 2024, police say Acevedo Garcia was working directly with Wedding's second-in-command, Andrew Clark, a Toronto-based elevator mechanic in his 30s who had relocated to Mexico in 2022. Acevedo Garcia helped coordinate Wedding's drug logistics from a distance. While he organized shipments, Wedding and Clark were focused on eliminating any threats to their organization. Clark had taken interest in a young man named Malik Cunningham, who had just been released from the Toronto South Detention Center. Then, Clark arranged for Cunningham to travel to Mexico, where he underwent weapons training, ranging from small arms to long-range rifles, under a
What? What's going on? He grew liking to the man and he said, "Yo, you're gonna be my hitman? Go to Mexico and learn how to shoot." What's going on here?
arranged for Cunningham to travel to Mexico, where he underwent weapons training, ranging from small arms to long-range rifles, under a program modeled on military instruction. Once trained, he was sent back to Canada with the names. His first assignment came with a payment of $100,000.
No
the target,
way.
Randy Fader, a 29-year-old American-Canadian citizen. On April 1st, 2024, Cunningham traveled to Fader's home in Nigeria and shot him at close range in his driveway before fleeing. The motive remains unclear, but police believe Fader had drawn the negative attention of the Wedding network. With that killing carried out, Clark began preparing Cunningham for additional jobs. One contact offered $200,000.
It's real life hitman out here. You think you're sick driving through the ops, closing your eyes and busting your switch? Look at this guy. This guy went to Mexico and he came back a hitman. Yo, there's always levels to this shit, eh? There's always levels. There's always a bigger dog out there. There's always a badder boy than you. You gotta be
real estate agent in
joking.
Vancouver. Another promised more than twice the amount for a group in Toronto. A third listed a target in Dubai for $1 million. All were described as enemies of El Jefe. Then, on April 14th, 2024, Cunningham made a critical mistake. He was spotted driving the same vehicle he had used in the Fader shooting. The car, fitted with fraudulent license plates, was parked outside a funeral home in the Greater Toronto area, where mourners had gathered following another homicide. Officers from York...
All that training, all that bullshit, and he's a fucking goofy. Unless they wanted him to get caught. That's the only thing I could assume. Maybe the boss El Jefe told him, yo, go hug that charge so they don't think it's me, broski. When you go, tell them I had nothing to do with it.
Regional police approached, suspecting the vehicle was stolen, and took Cunningham into custody. Inside the car, they found 4 mobile phones, multiple rounds of ammunition, and $100,000 in cash. When investigators searched the devices, they uncovered encrypted messages exchanged between Cunningham and Clark, messages that prosecutors say laid out the structure and scope of the murder-for-hire plot. This was the beginning of the FBI's Operation Giant Slalom, and more arrests followed soon after. Authorities arrested Raitt and Singh at their home in Ontario on charges of conspiracy to export, possess, and distribute controlled substances, while Andrew Clark was arrested on October 8th in a restaurant in Guadalajara on 11 charges including conspiracy to possess, export, and distribute cocaine, 4 counts of murder, and 1 count of attempted murder. He was later extradited to the United States. In total, 14 men were arrested, 8 of them Canadian. Malik Cunningham, charged alongside Clark in the killing of Ryan Fader, is scheduled to appear before a Toronto court in January 2026. At a press conference held days after Clark's arrest in October, the FBI announced a $50,000 reward for information leading to the arrest and extradition of Ryan Wedding. Speaking to reporters, U.S. Attorney Martin Estrada stated, "He chose to become a major drug trafficker, and he chose to become a killer." By early 2025, authorities were preparing for trial, and Jonathan Acevedo Garcia was expected to be a central witness. But on January 31st, while eating lunch at a shopping mall in Medellin, Colombia, Acevedo Garcia was allegedly shot and killed. The attack was carried out in public.
Yo, these guys think they can snitch and not get killed? When we're talking about Mexico here, brother, you're not snitching, bro. Like, snitching doesn't work in Mexico, brother.
Without him, the government lost a key piece of direct testimony, one that had been intended to tie several of Wedding's associates directly to the operation. Although at the time, there was no direct confirmation from law enforcement that he was killed. During a virtual court appearance, Gurpreet Singh's lawyer, Brian Greenspan, noted, "There has never been an admission that he is dead, although we all know he's dead." As a result, the trial was postponed to 2026. In March of 2025, Clark pleaded not guilty to all charges in a California federal courtroom. Though the killings took place in Canada, prosecutors allege that they were ordered as part of a broader U.S. criminal conspiracy. His trial, too, has been delayed, now rescheduled for February 2026. On March 6, 2025, Ryan Wedding was officially added to the FBI's 10 most wanted fugitives list. That same day, the U.S. Department of State's Bureau of International Narcotics and Law Enforcement Affairs announced a reward of up to $10 million for information leading to his arrest or conviction, building on the FBI's existing $50,000 reward. At a press conference, senior bureau official F. Courtright Whelan
is $10 million worth it if he's a cartel boss and he'll get you smoked? I don't think so.
Stated, "We are committed to protecting American communities from thugs who, with clear consciences, deliberately peddle illicit narcotics and prey on our youth." On November 19, 2025, the U.S. Justice Department, the FBI, and the RCMP held a joint press conference. During the announcement, U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi revealed that a newly unsealed indictment accuses Ryan Wedding of coordinating the murder of a key witness ahead of his scheduled testimony. According to prosecutors, Wedding had photographs of the witness and his wife posted to a website called Dirty News in an effort to assist co-conspirators in locating the pair. The murder took place in Medellin, Colombia on January 31, 2025. The site had since been seized and taken offline as part of the Operation Giant Slalom. Although authorities did not release the witness's name, the timing of the killing aligns with the alleged murder of Acevedo Garcia. During the press conference, U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi stated,
"Today we're unsealing a new indictment, charging Wedding with 2 additional counts of witness tampering and intimidation."
So he might
murder,
beat that.
Money.
Hold on. So one of the guys, they don't even know he's dead. And the second guy...
Pam Bondi stated,
"Today we're unsealing
News in an effort to assist co-conspirators in locating the pair.
I don't
The
know.
murder took place in Medellin, Colombia on January 31st, 2025. The site had since been seized and taken offline as part of the Operation Giant Slalom. Although authorities did not release the witness's name, the timing of the killing aligns with the alleged murder of Acevedo Garcia. During the press conference, U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi stated,
Today we're unsealing a new indictment, charging Wedding with 2 additional counts of witness tampering and intimidation, murder, money laundering, and drug trafficking."
On November 18, 2025, 10 alleged associates of Wedding, including 7 Canadians, were arrested and charged under the expanded indictment. Among those arrested were Gursawak Singh Bal of Mississauga, identified by authorities as a co-owner of the Dirty News website. Another defendant, Canadian-Dominican reggaeton artist Edwin Basora Hernandez, is accused of providing the victim's contact details to help Wedding's group locate him. Also taken into custody was Deepak Paradkar, a lawyer for Ryan Wedding. According to Bill Asaley, First Assistant U.S. Attorney to the Central District of California, Paradkar put up a little bit of resistance during the arrest. His lawyer advised him to kill the witness. When you have lawyers who are assisting international drug trafficking players on how to evade law enforcement and to murder witnesses, we can't have that stand. RCMP Commissioner Mike Duhem also addressed the public during the press conference.
"I want to emphasize that our work is not done. Fugitive Ryan Wedding remains one of the top threats to Canadian public safety, and as per the previous indictment, continues to run an over $1 billion a year criminal enterprise."
Authorities believe Wedding is currently in Mexico, but his presence in the United States, Canada, Colombia, Honduras, Guatemala, Costa Rica, and other locations has not been ruled out. He is described as 6 foot 3 inches or 197
Wait, hold
meters,
on.
approximately
This
240
video
pounds
came
or
out before
108
you got
kilograms.
arrested?
His eyes are blue.
If you made it this far, like the video, subscribe, don't be a hater, and react to more videos later. Wow, bro. So this guy dropped this video before he even got arrested, yo. That's crazy, bro. I'm out.